is a direct benefit, an economic benefit of historic preservation. There's environmental benefits of historic preservation. But it also kind of upsets me that there are secondary benefits, and we don't really focus on what I consider the main benefit of historic preservation, and that's the social value of historic preservation. So whenever I try to make the case, people tell me that social values are squishy, and they can't be measured. And I think, well, can they? So a long time ago, in a small country far, far away, Bhutan, they decided that something was better than measuring just the economics of prosperity. And they developed a gross national happiness index. And they're still using this today. In fact, in their 2020 plan, they ranked happiness as a higher indicator of prosperity than GDP. Now, it took a couple decades for others to catch on, but they did. The former president of France, Nicolas Sarkozy, put together a planner looking at ways to re-examine success. And he pulled together all these top economists, and they decided that well-being needed to be part of this index. It urged, the report that this committee came up with, that the time is right to shift the emphasis from measuring economic production to measuring people's well-being. And similarly, the UK just last month released its first annual happiness index. And this was official. This was an initiative by the Prime Minister, and the Office of National Statistics pulled this information together. And the report is something that decision makers are going to perhaps use in future policy making. Getting broader than that, the UN is also looking at how to reevaluate global economic systems. Last year, they passed a resolution, and they declared that GDP was not an accurate measure because well-being was not considered. As recently as this spring, they convened a high-level meeting, and that is the official term, the high-level meeting. And as a result of that, they came up with a report, and they're urging other nations to look at new economic systems. And these systems, they say, should have as its goal human happiness and the well-being of all the earth. That recognizes as key conditions for the new economy ecological sustainability, fair distribution, the efficient use of all resources, and that requires healthy balance among thriving natural, human, social, cultural, and built assets. Here in the US, as recently as last week, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke, said that we should really consider other factors. He stressed that we should look at social ties, sense of community, job security, and upward mobility in looking at economic analyses. And there are other efforts that are springing up across the country. In Vermont this year, they passed legislation that's going to look at the societal well-being of all Vermonters through what they call a genuine progress indicator. And this will measure what matters. In other places like Seattle and Eau Claire, Wisconsin, they're looking at other happiness initiatives, surveying the residents to see what makes them happy. So this is all very forward-thinking, right? But there are some skeptics because happiness is also very subjective. And there's so many of us in the room, happiness probably means different things to each of us as well. To the Beatles, happiness is a warm gun. To some of us, including myself, happiness might be a cupcake. Or perhaps a dry martini. Happiness could be something about exercising your body, like swimming, or something that exercises your mind, like chess. For those of us that are optimists, happiness is right now. And for pessimists, happiness might be overrated. Or the skeptics. Happiness is an inside job. For some, happiness is really hard to come by. And for many of us, happiness is just a big mystery. But I'm hopeful that for a lot of us here in this room, happiness might be historic preservation. So when I came up with this idea, I realized quickly that the pursuit of happiness isn't just this fine phrase that our founding fathers came up with, that there's actually a wealth of research on it, and it's pretty mainstream. I'm sure all of you have seen books, you've seen TV shows, you've seen articles. There's been a lot of focus on happiness lately. And I think that this is because happiness is kind of a universal thing, regardless of your age, or your income, or your gender, or your race. Everyone can associate with happiness. And although there is some subjectivity in what happiness is, I found in my little amount of research on the subject that there are some base factors that most consider key to determining happiness. And these are things that you would all expect. It's health, it's wealth, it's family relationships, it's work, it's community and friends, it's personal values, and it's personal freedoms. And this is sort of consistent across the board. But there's also a consensus that in addition to these base factors, that there are other factors that play into what determines happiness. And this is where historic preservation comes in. Because there's reason to believe there's a direct relationship between happiness and place. So, most of this research is pretty recent. The key piece that I looked at was released just last year, and it's a study called Understanding the Pursuit of Happiness in 10 Major Cities. And this was released jointly between West Virginia University and University of South Carolina Upstate. And it concludes that design and condition of cities is associated with the happiness of the residents. So they looked at and surveyed 1,000 people in 10 different cities, and these cities were literally all over the map, from New York to London to Paris to Tokyo to Seoul to Toronto to Milan. And the findings were universal. I'm just going to read a few of the things that this study found. The authors hypothesized the way cities and city neighborhoods are designed and maintained can have a significant impact on the happiness of city residents. The key reason we suggest are that places can facilitate human social connections and relationships, and because people are often connected to quality places that are cultural and distinctive. City neighborhoods are an important environment that can facilitate social connections and connections with place itself. These connections, in turn, are important for happiness and one's quality of life. They go on to state, happiness and its pursuit is a subject that should be a concern for scholars of urban places and urban policy. The way that cities are built and maintained could be an important means to improving our quality of life. The way policies reinforce or enable each other and affect the lives of well-being in city residents must be brought into greater focus. So there's a few things here that I think are really key. First is, it's not just the design of the place, but also the maintenance of the place. So somewhere like German Village has a great start because it's already designed to promote happiness. But I'm sure some of you may remember that it wasn't always maintained well enough to promote happiness. And again, that's where historic preservation plays a huge role. The authors also stress the quality of the place and also point out that cultural and distinctive are important factors in happiness. So this coincides really well with another study, the Soul of the Community Study. And this study was put on by Gallup and funded by the Knight Foundation. It was a 3-year study looking at 26 different cities and surveyed 43,000 people. And it looked at attachment factors, what made people attached to certain cities or places. And the results are a little bit surprising. It wasn't the things that you would think. It wasn't good schools. It wasn't a strong economy. It wasn't somewhere that's safe and secure. Instead, the things that might tie us were aesthetics, openness, and social connectedness. What was even more surprising was that the places that had higher attachment had more local economic growth. So this supports the theory that people who are feeling attachment to a place spend more time there, they spend more money there, they're more productive, and they're more invested in the place. So, if we can agree that happiness is something that's an important consideration for prosperity, and that there's a direct connection between happiness and place, then what are the potential practical implications of this? So I think we can all agree that not all communities are built equally. And some will probably be better for attachment and well-being than others. Some are designed to foster connections and civic pride, and some are just not. Typically, older historic communities are the former. So right here in German Village, how does this play out? Well, typically the lots are a little bit narrower, which foster communication between people. The buildings are aesthetically very beautiful. The commercial, from what I could see, is sort of scattered around the district, so it fosters interaction and walking. It's a very walkable community. There are gathering spaces like parks, and it seems there's a whole lot of citizen involvement here as well. So people want to be here to visit and to live, not just because it's beautiful, because it makes them feel good to be here. It makes them feel connected to people and places. And I'm just going to repeat something that the study once said. City residents appear to be happier when they feel connected to the people and the places of their cities. So another example of where this is really put into practice is Bogota, Colombia. And the mayor there, Enrique Peñalosa, was really a pioneer in his plan for happiness. And basically, all the policies that he put in place were only to improve the quality of life of residents. He said, we had to build a city not for businesses or automobiles, but for the children, and thus for people. Instead of building highways, we restricted car use. We invested in high-quality sidewalks, pedestrian streets, parks, bicycle paths, libraries. We got rid of thousands of commercial signs and planted trees. All of our everyday efforts have one objective: happiness. So, what about Columbus? Well, I think, and I'm not just saying this because I'm here, that you're really well poised to follow the lead in promoting happiness. And there's a few reasons why I think this. I haven't been here long, but I did a little bit of research, and I know that you have great neighborhoods, and you have great bones for historic preservation. And I know that there's a group of people here that really care about the historic neighborhoods here in Columbus. There's also great infrastructure and leadership. I'm really impressed that not only you have a wonderful state historic preservation office here, and a top-notch statewide, citywide, and neighborhood organizations, you also have some real leadership, I think, in your mayor. From what I've read about him, he put into place programs like Neighborhood Pride and also supporting revitalization of neighborhoods like Franklinton, which others may have considered far too long to do something to. I also know that he was appointed by the president to serve as the mayoral representative on the National Advisory Council for Historic Preservation, so that says a lot for your city. And it really means that you can be a model for others, and that he can also bring information back to Columbus that will help you improve your preservation here in town. So, this is great for Columbus, but it's also great for preservation as a whole, because we really need to be innovative about our national preservation policies. Historic preservation by its very nature is rooted in the past, and it's not always forward thinking. We're often seen as obstructionists. We rely on rules and regulations. But what would it be like if instead of the people that people know us as is, you can't do this, that, or the other, we were known as the people that promoted happiness and well-being? What does that like change? So I'm suggesting that we jump on this happiness bandwagon because all of the information that I've shared with you has been pulled up just in the past few months. So we really could be ahead of the curve on this. And we really need to ensure that historic preservation is an integral part of any strategy promoting happiness. So I'm going to close with just a couple quotes from an author, very appropriate title, The Architecture of Happiness. And he states, "One of the great but often unmentioned causes of both happiness and misery is the quality of our environment, the kind of walls, chairs, buildings, and streets we're surrounded by. A good building can change your life, and a bad one can ruin it. So let's go forth, be happy, and change some lives in a positive way."